All right.
My wife awoke me sometime shortly after 7 o'clock on the morning of May 23rd. And she told me that there were vehicles parked out there and they were marked with ASPCA on the side of them. Well, it didn't concern me too much because I wanted to stay in bed and sleep. So I probably slept for another hour before I got up and I looked out the window, they were still there. And I didn't think much of it until I went outside and commenced to mow my lawn that day, probably around 11 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as I got up and started mowing the grass, I noticed that the members of the ASPCA were walking across my property. I took a real offense to that and told the gentleman that was carrying the gun and looked like he was the one that was in charge of everything to stay the fuck off my property. In which case he told me he would. And later, as I was mowing in the back and the ASPCA was still here, I noticed that they were chasing chickens across my property in the tall grass. Well, it looked like the chickens were smarter than the people that were chasing them. And I'm sure that once they got on the ground, that they were able to outrun the people, because chickens are the same family as pheasants. And pheasants can outrun dogs in cornfields. So I'm pretty sure that not all of the chickens that were on my property got back to the cages and left with the ASPCA. I can't verify that, but I don't think there was much chance of them catching all those birds that they were chasing on my property. Anyway, they finally left. Later that day I found out that because the ASPCA doesn't marshal their vehicles, instead they just park them along the street, that we didn't get our mail that day. So not only did they come across my property and trespass, but they also inconvenienced me. So the chances of them getting a $19 a month donation from me are next to, if not impossible. They'll never get any money from me. Anyway, I found the exercise that they were unprofessional. They didn't seem to know what they were doing. They had a lot of people standing around doing nothing, and certainly the people that I witnessed don't know how to handle any kind of fowl. That's it.